Welcome to episode 82, Camino Primitivo, Finisterre.
Join us as we talk about the journey to the end of the world, not just ending in Santiago, but continuing on.
A place where the finite and the mortal transforms into the infinite and the immortal. And move from lusty hags to Ariel's
bra. Because we can contain multitudes and paradox as witches.
Stay tuned. Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
Ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to episode 82, Camino Primitivo, Finisterre. And we'll talk about what all of that means in a bit.
Also, we'd love to let our listeners know that on March 23rd, we're going to be doing our very first Witchy Wit podcast meet and greet. And our listeners are welcome to join in. You can go over to Patreon and get more information there. We'd love to see you.
So, before we hop into our episode, how about we just kind of talk about where we are right now?
I'd love to.
Okay.
Would you like to go first?
Sure. San Antonio is the home of a really significant international piano competition with musicians from China, Russia, Korea, the United States, Japan. I'm trying to remember somewhere else in Europe. I can't remember.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I actually missed some of it just because I had other things going on in my life. But I caught the finals on Saturday. And they were amazing. The finals, the three finalists performed a full piano concerto with an orchestra. It was the Mexico Philharmonic, and it was amazing. The first was Beethoven 4, which is a personal favorite of mine. And the woman, when she played, it was like the music was like filigree. You know how you're just sitting there and it's just so clear and crisp and glorious. And then the second person did a Schumann concerto, and the third did the famous Tchaikovsky da 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 dum bum 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 ba da da. Never mind. Anyway, so okay, somewhat apparently that is famous as I thought. But anyway, so if you were awake at like midnight back in the 60s and 70s, I think it was the RCA recorded collection, that was the music that they played for it. And if you called by midnight tonight, they would throw in another record or something. So that's why it was famous for a long time. Anyway, I said all of this to say that I had not been to a professional piano recital. I've gone to my students' recitals and things like that in such a long time. And it's just amazing hearing that kind of commitment to music. These are people who practice anywhere between like 6 to 8 hours a day. And it's just it was so heartwarming for me, because I've gotten kind of cynical about this music. You know, how many times do you need to hear Beethoven, right? When there's people who are writing and creating now and they're not getting a play. And there's a reason why we hear Beethoven, because that music is so profound, and the performances of by these young, the person who played the Beethoven was 20 years old.
Wow.
20 years old. And I could never dream of ever even playing an eighth as good as this person. And she just brought this piece to life. It was just amazing. So anyway, I said all of this to say that this was a really inspiring and musically uplifting weekend for me.
Wow.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. it just reminded me why I'm a musician. I'm not that kind of musician,
Right,
but why I love. I mean, it just my love for music is such an important part of sustaining my life, and it's performances like that really do keep me going. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that's me.
Wow.
Yeah. What about with you?
So, I mean, I feel like we're both just really checking in about the fine arts. I'm checking in about TikTok.
Okay.
So, not really.
So let's talk about TikTok.
I have turned over a new leaf, and I'm going to use the word cooking like loosely, but like I always talk about how I don't like to cook. I'm not a cook. I don't enjoy cooking. When I was living alone, I like had various methods of like preparing meals and then like freezing them. So I could cook less. You know, it was all about like min-maxing my cooking. Like, what is the minimal amount of effort I can do to get the maximum amount of like food.
Yeah.
You know, so recently I just, without even really realizing it, I started to see recipes show up on my TikTok and my Instagram. And then when I liked one, I started saving them to this folder. And then I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to make one. And so I've made like a couple of salads. I've made some, I made vegan cinnamon rolls.
Whoa.
I've done like various different like tofu based recipes. But the interesting thing that I find is like, I am not interested in looking on the internet for a recipe and then doing it. I need to visually see it, see them prepare it, and then read the recipe. And then be able to go back and forth between the video and the recipe.
Okay. I get that. Like,
I also don't want any pressure of actually having to prepare it for someone or for an occasion. I just like to go home and do it. And that's it.
Well, very smart, because they say never try a new recipe on company, right? So
and some of them I've liked. Some of them have been, none of them have been like, oh my good, but like some of them I've liked. Some of them I haven't.
Could you do that again?
Oh my good. Like some of them I didn't like. The one had like a lemon salad dressing, and I did not like that. One of them was like a tofu, or it was a quinoa crusted tofu.
Oh.
And I would do it a little different the next time, you know, but some of them have been great. Like the banana vegan cinnamon rolls. That was great. I made a soup from scratch.
Wow.
Like I'm talking about, like I went and got vegetables and roasted the vegetables and then blended them with an immersion blender. I have never used an immersion blender before.
But you had one.
I had one because a friend came over and cooked and left it. Like probably 15 years ago. So
you blew the dust off of it?
I did, actually. I know I have one of these in the back of my cabinet.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
Good for you. Yeah. How does it feel? So as you're eating this food, what kind of things are you thinking about? The food that you've made from these recipes.
The way that I'm doing it feels fun and enjoyable, and it's delicious and nutritious, and a way for me to like love on my partner. And love on myself, and like I have fun while I'm doing it. I believe that that's because I'm not doing it all the time. So I'm just going to keep it that way.
I love that playful attitude it seems like you have around that.
Yeah, like Saturday night I cooked. Like that was what I did.
Yay!
So
yeah, and you feel absolutely no pressure to say I'm going to do this every day or anything like that. Good for that. I think that's so, and that keeps that joy of making and eating, and without like, okay, what's for dinner? Like, fuck you. Oh, reservations.
yeah, I like that, reservations.
Like stop. Okay, yeah. Well, congratulations!
Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you.
One of these days, I hope to taste some of this.
I plan on making some for retreat.
Yay!
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah. You know who else has good food? I hear.
Who?
Spain. Where we're going on our Camino Primitivo.
Beautiful segue. Beautiful segue. Shall we talk a little bit about the Camino Primitivo?
I think that would be great.
Yay! Well, and what specifically do you think we should talk about today?
I think we should, first we should talk a little bit about like what the Camino Primitivo is. But then I think we should spend the majority of the episode chatting about Finisterre, where we will be ending our Camino.
Yeah. So we've had, this will be our third episode now.
I believe so.
On the Camino. And so just a refresher. So the refresher is the Camino de Santiago is a walk to the town of Santiago, or the Camino just means walk, right? And it's the current version of it is a Christian pilgrimage that can start from a number of different places, but they all end in Santiago de Compostela. We talked a little bit about the Compostela last time, about the field of stars, so, and we'll be doing that in June.
June of this year.
But not the Christian version.
Correct. So just like you said, the current iteration is that it's a Christian pilgrimage. Our curiosity was piqued because it seems like there's so much more to it that began before that. And I think something that you and I have said is that we do believe that Camino de Santiago is Christian. And we also believe that there are people walked that path before it was a Christian pilgrimage, and perhaps that is why they walked that path, was because that path already existed.
The path existed, exactly.
And the path also did not end in Santiago. We actually are saying that the path actually extended past that, farther west, and ended in Finisterre.
Exactly. So Santiago, the reason it's a Christian pilgrimage is because that is reportedly the place that's Saint James, Santiago. The bones of Saint James are, which are Christian relics, and that King Alfonso II, I'm just making that up, I think it's the second though, did a pilgrimage from Oviedo to Santiago to acknowledge and to sanctify the city as a holy spot. And so, but this Christian pilgrimage was overlaid on a path that already existed, and that we discussed at length in our Camino Primitivo prehistoric roots
and roots. ROUTES and ROOTS.
Episode 80. So we talk a lot about that there, but yeah, but we're going to talk a little bit more about the Finisterre part today.
Yes. Yeah. So Finisterre is where the path continues through Santiago, and then it continues all the way until it gets to the ocean. And Finisterre in Latin is, can you say it?
You just said it.
Well, like the Latin parts.
It's just Finisterre. And
then finis means end.
The end, and terra is the world.
Is the world.
The end of the world. Yeah.
So it literally, they named it literally what it means. It is. They believed it was the end of the world. They believed at the time that it was the furthest point west. But we now know that it's actually not. The Cabo da Roca in Portugal is actually if you actually measurement, but they didn't have those tools back then. Yes. But it was believed in that part of the world that was the farthest point west that you could go before you ran to the end, and then that was where the sun set, and that was the end. Right.
So this is a real quick refresher because we talk about this a lot in episode 80. But the path basically is it's a Christian pilgrimage that's overlaying a Roman trade route, and the Roman trade route just expanded upon a prehistoric path that had been in use for anywhere between 2 to 4 millennia before King Alfonso II decided to do that route. So great deal of history, and we won't go into it a lot today because we went into it a lot a couple of episodes ago, but it's really capturing my imagination.
And it's been really fun to dig. I think we mentioned this in the other episodes too, so just briefly to say it one more time is, whenever I dig, I oftentimes can find the Christian information, and then I find that I can find possibly some information about during the pre-Christianity Roman times, but then after that I hit a wall normally. So it's taking a lot of digging to find this information, and it's been really exciting.
It's really been really exciting. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of the end of the world. So we talk in in episode 80 about some of the meaning of that, but let's kind of delve in the idea of that being the end of the world, being the end of the mortal world, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe we can. Would you care to talk a little bit more about like some of the energetic and metaphorical aspects of that?
So Finisterre was believed to be the end of the world, the end of like our physical world, and then the beginning of this spiritual, this next phase world. And it was this liminal space, or it is a liminal space. And it's literally, so on a literal level, it's where the land ends and the sea begins, and then the sky meets there. So like we have these three, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but like the Celtic people had this concept of land, sea, and sky. So it's this liminal space where those three, I'm like making like my fingers meet, like where land, sea, and sky meet. But also it's this liminal space where the sun sets because it's the farthest point west. So in my mind, I'm imagining people like day after day as they move from east to west, they're following the sun, you know, going over them from east to west, and they keep following it to the west until finally they get to the farthest point that they believed, Finisterre, and then they watch the sun touch the water. They watch the sun set. So there's also this liminality of like the sun passing from day into night. And then there's also this belief that that was where the beloved dead were. Their ancestors were there in that, like not in the water, but like that was the land of the ancestors. So then you have the land of the living and the land of the dead. And then you also have this thing that you spoke about, which was the Milky Way.
Oh, yes.
And this play with light and dark.
Yeah, the day sky and the day ending, but the whole idea of, so the day kind of dies, but something else is being born, which is the night, which is filled with the field of stars, the campus of stars, right? And so filled with the Milky Way. And if you're walking at night, the way the Milky Way is disposed, at least at that period of time, it seemed like that was the path that you could then follow when you're not following the sun.
Jeez.
Is that amazing?
I just love it. And like this runway almost, you know, when you get to Finisterre and then there's this runway of the Milky Way that you can,
that takes, that if you think about it, you know, these are stars, right? So things that people can't touch, but they can see, so they know they exist, kind of like the spirits, right? And so it's the idea of how they combine some of these ideas, the idea of, you know, the spirits, the ancestors, those who have gone before, the dead, and kind of attaching them to this look that you have when you're looking at these, you know, this path of stars that continue and continue and continue and continue long past where we can see, but in our imagination we know that it continues even further, right?
And you just mentioned it, but the Compostela, our listeners can go back and we talked about more in that last episode, but it's just so interesting how it's tied into the name, you know, and we even, it's just tying into these roots.
Oh yeah. And often people many pilgrims are not aware of all of these other contexts, and that's fine. I mean, they're having their experience, and but I really love teasing out these other ways of thinking about this that people, you know, I'm not making this up. You know, these are ways that people, these are myriad ways, right, that people are thinking about the same thing.
Well, maybe we could talk about how the Celtics kind of thought about these things.
Sure.
Because this was new to me as someone who isn't super familiar with this sort of spiritual approach. I wasn't really aware of a lot of this.
Well, so and we do have signs of this even today. So, you know, when you think about even like in so here's an example. So in Rome, in Christianity, in many denominations, Roman Catholicism and others as well, like say people give something up for Lent, right? But Sundays are feast days. So let's say I give up candy for Lent. Sundays are feast days. So on Sundays I can eat candy because it's a feast day. So during, you know, the days of Lent, for most of those days I can't, but on a feast day I can. But Sunday starts Saturday night at sundown.
Is that true?
Yes. So
I'm not Catholic. I don't.
Yeah. So I mean, well, and I guess
I'm not Catholic. I'm on a witchy podcast.
But you know,
I was never Catholic, is what I should have said.
Okay, yeah, there you go. one might say, there's some really witchy Catholicism.
That's also true. That's true.
Yeah. So, but the point is, and that's based on Hebrew traditions, right? From which Christianity sprung. And those are based on other pre-Christian thoughts about time. It's not even religious thought about time. It's just thoughts about time. That the next day started, so that when the day dies, the next day has begun. So that's at sundown.
And this just really trips me up. Not that I disagree with it, but just it's such a to me, morning is the beginning of the day. Right. Like that's what I've grown up. That's what the culture holds. That's what I've grown up thinking. And so this concept, I'm just my fingers are on my temples right now. This concept is so trippy that the concept that the beginning is at sunset.
Because so here's the thing. It's like the day, so we have 24 hours in a day, right? So if the sun goes down, then according to these early thinking, that day is done. That day is done at that point, right? And so what's happening? We're just sitting around. We're just going to sit with our thumbs up our asses waiting for the next day to start? No, that tells you that if that day ends, that meant the other day has to be starting. And so that kind of it is. I guess it's cut and dry because one day ended, the next day started. But that kind of overlap is the part that is often played with.
Yeah, it's that liminality.
The liminality is often played with. Yeah, and so anyway, but and we've talked about this before too, about how we think of something as, okay, this is the end, right? And sitting with that for a moment, right? But because our culture tends to focus on sunrise and birth and
youth,
etc. And so there's something to be said with watching the sun sink into the sea, and watching that day end. And you may know in your heart and your spirit, etc., that the next day is going to grow out of that death, but actually being able to experience it standing at the end of the world, looking at the sea and the sun going in there. And that's what we're going to be doing.
Yes. Yeah. So another way that this shows up that I've seen, but really has new meaning now for me as we've been doing this research is I was familiar with the idea that Samhain is considered the new year, but Samhain is the new year, but adding this layer of context makes it make so much more sense to me. It's the beginning of the darker days, the more nighttime.
But it's also, the veil is thin. The veil is thin because it's the end and the end of the year and the beginning of the year.
That liminality again.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, when people talk about, oh yeah, the veil is thin. Well, why? Well, let's think about that.
Right.
Now, okay, it's just thin that day because
yeah.
Because somebody said, it's in my book. It's in my Cunningham.
Right. Yes, and Scott Cunningham says it.
There we go. Oh! Yeah, exactly. So, that type, and if we sit down and think about it, that type of cosmology still exists in our lives today. It's there's so many different ways of thinking about this. So it's not, I don't mean to say that we don't have these elements in our lives. Like I said with Lent, I don't think I ever finished, but I just want to say really quickly. During Lent, let's say I gave up candy, I would be sitting there waiting, sunset, candy! like just picture chocolate all over my face.
Yeah, like Willy Wonka style, just covered.
Exactly. And then you just throwing it back until the next sunset. But anyway, but so we do have some thinking along those lines even today.
So then going along with that, Finisterre then is that it's not just the end of the world, but it's also the beginning then
of the next.
And so again, we have that play on the liminality, and that's where you could reach over to the dead.
So let's take a step back from the spiritual and energetic, and let's talk a little bit more about the physical, shall we?
Okay.
Because that's I can't imagine what you're going to be experiencing at that point. What I'm looking forward to for myself is going through the physical, walking and climbing mountains and going through fields and the whole bit, and then seeing our first glimpse of the sea. and sun, and I don't know, we might be, hungry or whatever, or, putting ballistics on our feet or something. And then, but walking and getting to that spot, that physical spot. And we will be one of many, I would suspect, doing that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that physical spot,
okay.
shall we?
So the first is that it's on the Costa de Morte, which means
the coast of death. And that's basically because it's really treacherous. So there's now a lighthouse there because so many ships would just crash into the shore, into the rocks.
And I was actually able to find some people who said that it was also because the Celts believed that was where the sun died.
Oh yeah.
So just more tie-ins to death. So I'm sure it just it's like chicken and egg, like which one came first. Like I think they probably are both connected. I would imagine so. There's so much about death in this area, and then also it's really rocky and
death. I love it.
Yes,
I love people who live in death, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So, a couple of, as I say, there's tons of places that are significant, and I mentioned, I don't think I mentioned them a whole lot, in our, previous episode, but we'll mention them later today. But one, important place is, Monte Faccio. And this is just basically one of I think it's the highest spot on Cape Finisterre. So Finisterre, the town of Finisterre, is on this cape that juts out from the land, and the cape is also called Finisterre, funnily enough. And that's, I guess, because of that jutting aspect of it, that's why people probably attributed it to as the end of the world, as being the furthest westernmost point. And then but Monte Faccio is this wonderful place because it's so high, and when you're up there, you can see a little bit further over the horizon than you can on the ground. So it's almost a magical place where you're able to see more into the land of the dead.
So just again, I want to point out this liminality where it's it was believed to be the farthest point west. It's the tallest point next to the ocean where the sun is, like, it's just all of these like extremes.
Yes.
It's so cool.
Yeah, very cool. And hopefully we'll get to that.
So then on top of Monte Faccio, it was a sun altar, which I actually had to look up. I translated what Ara Solis meant. And so Ara means altar, and Solis means sun. Because I was like, what does this mean? I don't even know.
Yes, indeed. We know that at least, actually, we have 1000 BCE in our comments, but I think they found bones from 2000 BCE
awesome.
There. Yeah. Anyway, I have more notes, but there's only so much we can like bore everybody with. Anyway, we know for a fact that there were prehistoric people on Finisterre and on Monte Faccio. And so we have at least 1,000 years, between 2 and 4 for sure, that we know. At least, maybe not Finisterre per se, but in that area along the coast. And so we have the mountain, Monte Faccio, and we know that on this mount, we're not sure exactly where, but we know that there was an altar there, basically a stone slab that's set on 2 standing stones.
That's so cool.
And that's the Ara Solis. And from it, people would stand there, like behind the altar, with the altar between them and the sea, and watch the sun sink. And then it would sink first behind the altar, behind the stone. And then it would sink further down and further down and further into the sea.
It just, it stirs such emotion in me to think this. Like, I feel emotional.
Yeah. But the thing about it, the thing about the altar part of it, as opposed to anywhere else, is that was a place where you can invoke this energy of transformation, this energy of something changing from one thing to another. So changing from this moment of transformation from finite and mortal to infinite and immortal, right? And so you can actually see the moment or experience the moment. Okay. And this is again one of these ideas where we have the thinking, we have what we believe are the thinking of prehistoric people, but this is in Galicia in Spain, And the Galicians' national flag, they believe that their flag and their coat of arms actually represent this moment. So it's so the idea of the sun sinking into the ocean, into the sea, is mirrored in Christian cosmology by the Eucharist, by the last. So the idea of taking the wafer and sinking the wafer into the chalice. And so on their flag and their coat of arms, they have this. They have that image of the wafer going into the chalice, but they also feel that that's the sun sinking into the sea. The Galicians.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. Like they did. Like these people didn't just come up with the chalice and the wafer thing on their own. You know, like they were consciously or unconsciously being exposed to that imagery beforehand. Wow. That's new information to me. I even read through this before we.
But that whole, well, so you needed to hear it in the context of everything we've just said for it to really sink in. But that imagery of that moment, this liminal moment being not just, okay, there's the sun sinking into the thing and the thing and the thing, but it's also, there's transformation taking place that you can tap into. And that's why people wanted to worship the sun in that place. You can worship the sun anywhere. Right?
Yeah.
But this is where the sun is showing you the potential that you have as a living being. And what that living looks like might be different as, you know, with the transformation, right? But you get to experience that before you get to experience it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah. Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And I'm also, I mean, this is not the point of the podcast, but I'd also be interested in I'm going to be considering its tie-ins with the Eucharist too, and like that transformational energy and stuff like that. So,
and I think this is from your notes, is that this was a powerful place, and so many peoples, even before the Romans, wanted to, I don't want to say own this place, but they wanted to occupy this place. They wanted to get there to do the sun worship, but then the people who had control of this area also kind of had control over the transformation, right? Or at least they had control over who got to experience it. Yeah. So it was, I wouldn't say so much contention until the Romans, maybe not the Etruscans, the Phoenicians were the ones in the Phoenicians, went to see. But you know, so when people started to own places, you know, and to fight for places, then later it might have been more of a contentious spot, but people wanted to have access to that area.
Well, how about we talk a little bit about some of the practices? So actually this really excites me.
Okay.
Because this is one of the first things that really piqued my interest. So one of the things I noticed whenever I was first looking into this whole thing, specifically
the Camino.
The Camino was this scallop shell that people that's like pretty iconic for it, as like the symbol for it, and people have the image. People carry like a shell like strapped to their backpack, like I would call like a keychain, you know. And then like I'm a part of some Camino groups on social media, and I see a lot of these.
No, you're not neither.
Yes, I am.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
I'm even a part of this one Camino tattoo group. I don't have any tattoos. I'm not going to get one, but I find it telling what tattoos people get.
Okay, you have to tell me about that.
It's an entryway into their psyche. So
okay,
I'm really not in it for the tattoos. I'm more in for the psychology.
Okay.
But and like a lot of people get this symbol tattooed on them. The shell, yeah. I don't have any tattoos. You're making me nervous.
Well, yeah, we can do one. We can get like the transfer,
the big little temporary tattoos,
and then just not wash that part of our body for the yeah. Okay.
So I was really into the shell, and that was one of the first things that really got me digging below or continuing beyond the Christian idea of the Camino. And one of the things that I found out was that the shell was a symbol because these prehistoric people would be traveling from inland, and then they would go to the sea, and it's not like they could hop on Amazon and like buy a pack of shells, you know, or take a flight somewhere real quick and then come back with a shell. Like having this shell that you couldn't find inland was proof that they made it all the way there. Which it makes a lot of sense when there weren't buses or planes or trains. Like, you had to walk there. So, like, there weren't just these shells laying around. So the shell was the symbol that you actually made it to the completion of your journey. And then you carried it back to show, like, as proof, I did it.
May I ask you this question? So why a scallop shell as opposed to like a double helix or, one of those other shells?
That's such a great question. Would you like to?
No, I'm asking you.
Because that was the type of shell that was available in that part of the ocean.
And?
Oh,
okay. I thought you told me this. And a scallop shell is, for people who may not know, it has it's like a what we call like a clamshell, an open side.
Oh,
and then the back of go ahead.
I would describe it as like, and this dates me, but like Ariel's bra shell is like the way I remember it.
Okay.
Like, I think a lot of people can. I know for me, I can picture that shell and actually the angle of it with like the circular crescent on the bottom and then the things coming up. That was her bra.
Well, so for maybe a slightly older generation, people would think of the birth of Venus because she's on a scallop shell.
Slightly older. We go from Ariel to the birth of Venus.
Yeah, she's also in a scallop shell.
Yes,
so there we go. So that image of the stripes on the back of it represent the sun's rays.
Yes.
So yeah.
So the shell was like believed to be like the sun setting over the edge of the ocean over Finisterre. And then I also thought it was interesting as I was looking a lot on the modern Camino stuff. Oftentimes I would describe it as the shell. So if I'm like picturing Ariel's bikini top shells, and then if I take it and I rotate it to my right and flatten it, so then the crescent part is on the left and the rays are extending out. I kept wondering, like, why is it that they're always that tilted that direction? Like, what does that mean? And then I came to realize what that is that's actually, if we look at it like nautically, that would be it being west. That would be the westward sun setting over the westward ocean.
So it's it's used as an arrow. It's used as a marker so that you're on the path. You know that it's used a lot as a directional signal instead of an arrow. Which I love.
I think it's so freaking cool.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that really like titillated me about all of this.
Really?
That was like the thing that I was like, I'm sold. Like, I'm sold on this.
This is an aside. By the time we started talking about it, it had already fully formed in your head, and you were like, yeah, I'm going to do the Camino. Would you mind telling us a little bit about how did you hear about it and decide you want to do it?
I had a friend tell me that she wanted to do the Camino, and I didn't know what it was. And so she told me, and so then I started doing research, and her thing was like, I'm either going to get pregnant or do the Camino.
Oh.
She ended up getting pregnant. So her and I didn't do the Camino.
Okay, gotcha.
But she planted the seed in me for the concept of what the Camino is.
Oh,
yeah. And then as she told me about it, I was like, this sounds witchy as fuck. So, and I feel like I have a pretty attuned witch dar.
Witchometer.
Yeah, my witchometer was like going off. And so I just did just a little bit of internet Google sleuthing. And it just, to me, seems like a very thin veneer. And like the things that I was reading, I was like, oh, they're like, it doesn't just start with the Romans, people. Like, people were here before the Romans. And then I did a little bit more sleuthing, and I was like, this is witchy as fuck. And I'm attracted to doing this witchy as fuck version.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. I might have known some of that, but I just, as fuck. So, I mentioned the scallop. We mentioned the scallop, and that, traditionally we'll see that, people will carry a scallop with them as they do their pilgrimage. But another tradition, and I'm not quite sure, when this sprung up, I think this is probably a part of the pilgrimage tradition as opposed to the prehistoric tradition, is that of taking a stone. It's kind of like your credencial, right? It's taking a stone and then carrying it with you the whole time that you're on the Camino. And then when you get to Finisterre, you leave it on the beach. Or throw it in the water, I guess.
Oh, man.
Like skip it on the...
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that idea, too. And can I share something about the scallop?
Yeah.
I mean, well, you know about it already. Someone gave me a scallop shell That would be you. But what I thought was amazing was just like that morning. Oh, it was the day of the lunar eclipse, and I thought it would be kind of cool to replant some stuff and let the eclipse energy kind of go on it. So I often at the bottom of my pots, I always have like other broken pots so that it keeps the soil from pouring out, and I was, going through and cleaning some pots out in preparation for reusing them. And in amongst all of these pot shards, I found a scallop shell. And then like an hour later, you gave me one. So I have 2 scallop shells. I mean, it's like I had none before, and then like an hour later I had 2, and so I have 2 scallop shells that are going to go with me on my Camino.
Oh, yay!
Thank you.
And what I thought was really cool was that the ones that I found were black.
Yes,
and I had picked them up. I had picked them up like years ago whenever I was out in San Diego, looking for a sea glass. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And,
that's amazing.
And I had picked up a lot of shells, but not many of that kind. And then I was walking in my yard and I looked down and there are these scallop shells. And I'm like, what the heck? I don't remember these scallop shells.
Yeah.
Like they just appeared.
They appeared when you needed to see them. Well, I mean, they were probably there the whole time, but you wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's amazing. So yeah, we have our scallop shells.
And I could only find 2. Because I have them in a certain gravel area of my yard for water drainage. Just like scattered on top. And I was like, looking, and I was like, how many more are these? And I could only find 2
because that's all you needed.
That's all. That's
wow,
you and me.
Yay! I'm so excited.
So in association with this Aura Solis, this sun altar, there are also some gods, goddesses, spirits connected to that area.
Yeah.
Okay,
so one other aspect of that scallop shell is that I mentioned Venus on the scallop shell, on the half shell, and that's actually the Greeks and Romans tapping into an earlier energy, and so the scallop shell actually is associated with a prehistoric pagan goddess, and we think it may be Orcabella, but we're not, or Orcabella, I guess, because it's Spanish. No, it's Galician, Orcabella, but we're not sure.
Okay, that's actually new information for me. I did not realize that was connected with Orcabella.
We're not sure, but we think so.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we can talk a little bit about Orcabella.
Okay, sure.
So she was brand new to me whenever we started doing this research. So she is like an ancient spirit of Galicia, and she is, I love how she's described as a lusty hag.
Yes!
And she just has an insatiable sexual appetite.
What?
And can we just stop for a second? And I would invite everyone to just, because I want to be a lusty hag.
I want to be a lusty, I think I am a lusty hag, or whatever. I think I'm there.
I just love this idea of like, she's just this lusty hag, and she is like, man, like that's the type of hag I want to be.
That's, she has her appetite, she has her desires, and Lord knows she's taking care of them. She's taking care of her needs.
Yes, please. I just love this so much.
Yes.
So she's associated with this area, and there's you mentioned in the last episode that there are these sacred stones all around this area, particularly in Finisterre, but there's one where it's connected with her, where people. So it later became known as St. William's Stone, but couples who couldn't have a child would go and have sex on this stone, and the stone was connected to her, and then it was said that she, like, her lust would help them conceive.
I love that.
I do too.
And I love that whole imagery of how she was very much a goddess of sovereignty, and so if you wanted to say that you were a king or leader or chief at that time, you had to find her and have sex with her. Then, of course, she turned into a lovely young lady, which,
I'm not really sure about that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering when that kicked in, but
yeah, but exactly.
Like,
like maybe they picked up a girl on the way back and said, "Oh yeah, this is Orcabella.
This hot chick, this is definitely her. This is Orcabella."
So I'm king. There we go.
So done, right? So I get to rule now.
But this idea. So people every once in a while read something where they said, "Oh, they were stone worshippers." No, they weren't. But they're stone. They felt these stones had this energy. And it could be embodied. It could be energy embodied from the goddess. It could be energy that represents that of the sun. Mm-hmm. But so these standing stones, or they could be, in some cases, people now feel as if they were actually energetic channels that would draw the energy down and store them. Like think about it. If the sun is beating on a stone, the sunlight is beating on a stone all day. Long into the night, you can feel the heat from that stone, right? So they felt that energy, that power, that magic was coming into these stones. Sorry, but were coming into these stones, and that you could literally tap that. Mm-hmm. So
they were tapping that they were tapping that to tap that.
Exactly. So So I mean, they had actual physical. Physical representations of this energetic power. And so these standing stones are so important, not because they were worshipped, but because they were tools. They were incredible, powerful, magical tools.
I also love this. I think the stereotype of an older woman, to just use the word hag, is totally like divorced from sexuality.
Oh yeah.
And I love this, like, she's old and yet she's hypersexual. And then like these young couples who can't have children, and then like she's close to death and they're trying to create life. And that by bringing these things together again with this like liminality, this like crossing over, like I just think there's something so magical about what I keep seeing with this liminality.
What I see here is something that we don't practice that much today, and that's holding paradox, like mentally and emotionally and spiritually and physically holding paradox. I would suggest that our culture really wants things to be clear, like you're there, I'm here, we're totally different, we're not connected, one of us is better than the other, we'll figure that out later, that kind of thinking. Whereas this, there's an element of this where there's interconnectedness between the physical and the spiritual, and we've mentioned this, but this whole idea that prehistoric brains could hold paradox. I mean, ours can. We just don't. We're just not trained in it anymore.
We also mentioned in the last episode a god named Janus, and I know we talked a lot about him, but just to mention him again, he was this. He is this god of transitions and doorways and arches and gates and anything with a beginning, anything with a beginning, anything with an end, even commerce, like initiating businesses. And so it makes sense to me that his energy was also really common part of this, in this part of the world where it was the beginning and the end at the same time too.
Yes, yeah, very. I forget there's terms for it, but very early versions of what later became among the Romans Janus. Yeah, because they came into these places and in many cases just brought into their culture the gods and energies and ideas from the cultures that they colonized or.
Yeah, usurped, colonized,
exactly.
Stamped out.
In some cases,
yeah. But Janus is also the root of the word January. The beginning is based off.
And Genesis.
Yes, that was also new to me.
Yeah. So it's it's a lot of powerful energy that I hope we feel. I'm sure we will. But what's beautiful about this is that. We're talking about these prehistoric roots of Finisterre, and it's also again talking about paradox. It's also a living town, a living village or a city or whatever. And there's this, the coastline that people live near or on, and so we get a chance to walk this path that has been walked for millennia. And then we get to end it and maybe have us a nice little cheese sandwich.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying, because there's a lighthouse that's built
Yes.
on this cape, you know, and we can hike up this Roman road that leads to the top of Monte Faccio, and where that altar was, and there's really nothing there anymore. Physically, I would say, like, energetically, there's going to be a shit ton there, but like, you know, it's that paradox, right?
Yes.
Like, we're going to be standing there in 2024 where this altar was, and these people practice for millennia, and these people are still walking there today. And I'm really seeing us as this bridge, this transition. So there's some Janus energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Transitioning and holding that space, saying, you know, I am here in this time, and I'm also honoring the time that was before.
Yeah. Links. We're links in the chain. Yeah. Brilliant. Tell us a little bit about this poem.
So I'm an English teacher by education. That's what my bachelor's degree is in. So I'm very familiar with Sylvia Plath. Like, she's a part of canonical literature as I was going through my like schooling. And so I started doing some research to see about maybe some poetry or some literature written about Finisterre. And like, up pops this poem by Sylvia Plath called Finisterre. And I was like, what?
What?
Is it about this Finisterre?
Yeah.
And it is.
And it is.
So I was really, I was just really surprised that I have I've been exposed to her so much through my education, but never come across this. And again, like those shells that I found in my yard, it just seems like it came at the perfect time.
Of course, yes.
So I thought we could maybe share that poem here. And just if people know anything about Sylvia Plath, she definitely has a darker energy about her. And I feel like that energy that she brings to her writing really matches this like energy of Finisterre.
Yeah. This was the land's end. The last fingers, knuckled and rheumatic, cramped on nothing. Black admonitory cliffs and the sea exploding with no bottom or anything on the other side of it, whitened by the faces of the drowned. Now it is only gloomy, a dump of rocks, leftover soldiers from old messy wars. The sea cannons into their ear, but they don't budge. Other rocks hide their grudges under the water.
The cliffs are edged with trefoils, stars and bells, such as fingers might embroider, close to death, almost too small for the mist to bother with. The mists are part of the ancient paraphernalia, souls, rolled in the doom nose of the sea. They bruise the rocks out of existence, then resurrect them. They go up without hope, like sighs. I walk among them, and they stuff my mouth with cotton. When they free me, I am bedded with tears.
Our Lady of the Shipwrecked is striding toward the horizon, her marble skirts blown back in two pink wings. A marble sailor kneels at her foot distractedly, and at his foot a peasant woman in black is praying to the monument of the sailor praying. Our Lady of the Shipwrecked is 3 times life-size, her lips sweet with divinity. She does not hear what the sailor or the peasant is saying. She is in love with the beautiful formlessness of the sea.
Gull-colored laces flap in the sea drifts beside the postcard stalls. The peasant anchor them with conches. One is told, "These are pretty trinkets the sea hides, little shells made up into necklaces and toy ladies. They do not come from the Bay of the Dead down there, but from another place, tropical and blue, we have never been to. These are our crepes. Eat them before they blow cold."
Whew.
That's some energy there.
That's Sylvia Plath.
That's
energy.
some straddling energy. And I don't know what she was tapping into, but I just see her straddling the crepes and the stalls and the statue and the people praying to the statue of the statue that's praying to, and I feel us joining in that part of the links going back into time, tapping into this energy.
Beautiful.
We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!